All right. Good afternoon, Facebook family and friends. You already know who it is. It's Deanna checking in. Hopefully, you all are making it a great weekend and or taking advantage of some much needed rest. But good afternoon again. Today, I'm going to be doing a recap of chapters 27 through 33 in the book of Genesis. For those who are just joining in, I was inspired to do this as a result of just praying and trying to find intentional ways to stay engaged with the whole series. Not a pastor, not ordained or any of that nature, just a teacher and a farmer. But I go to and from work and I tend to listen to him when it's just me in the car. Try not to do that with the children because they love to watch the Magic School Bus. And depending on what we have to do later in the day with practices and all of that fun, they also love holy hip hop. So I tend to engage them in a way that's going to keep their energy on high as well as keep them in a happy, healthy, whole mindset. And no disrespect to Les Feldick, but you have to just be a learner and an intent listener because he's not enigmatic. He doesn't hoop, holler, or do anything to draw attention outside of just teach and share what he understands from the Word of God. But that was like my initial motivation to want to do a recap of reading through the Old Testament, which was something that I've been doing for a couple years now and finally completed this past August. But anywho, we're going to jump right into Genesis 27. Notes, things that jumped out to me. First thing I say to anybody is to read the entire chapter. Y'all will more than likely hear me say that quite a bit, especially starting out with the book of Genesis. A lot of great stories with some really important lessons to learn or lessons learned. But I wrote recap entire chapter just for the sake of the hearers here. And my takeaway before I kind of do a quick recap is God ordained it to be so since the birth of Jacob and Esau when he told their mom Rebecca that the older shall serve the younger. So Genesis chapter 25 verses 22 and 23 is when Rebecca was having a hard labor and she cried out to God like, what is going on? Why does it have to be this way? And the Lord told her, you're going to be all right. You got two nations in your womb. You're going to have twins. And the older, Esau, shall serve the younger, Jacob. So, chapter 27 is all about how it came to be, which is where Isaac, the dad or father of Jacob and Esau, blesses Jacob, assuming that Jacob is his eldest. Because from what I'm learning and understanding with culture and customs, it's the firstborn son that inherits the promise, right? Everything that their dad owns, right? So, long story short, the recap of chapter 27 is Rebecca remembering what she was told when she was in labor with Jacob and Esau, told Jacob to pretend like he was Esau and help Jacob to deceive Isaac. Now, some people will wonder, okay, how in the world was Isaac deceived, right? How could this possibly happen? So, Isaac was older in years and his eyesight was fading. So, he was partially blind, if not completely blind, the way the story reads, which is why I highly encourage y'all to read the entire chapter of Genesis 27. But his eyesight was dim and he couldn't see good. And he essentially was like, hey, I'm getting up there in years. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be around. I want to go ahead and give my blessing. Please go get Esau, Rachel. I mean, Rebecca, go get Esau for me. And Rebecca was like, look, Isaac, I know Esau out in the field right now. I don't know when he's going to be back, but this is what your dad said to do. He's about to give his promise, right? And Rebecca was like, trust me, go ahead and find some clothes Esau has worn, and I'm gonna cover you up so you feel hairy, right? Go get a sheep. It was a whole bunch. It's a whole bunch. But long story short, what I highlighted was verse 11, where it says, "And Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, Look, Esau, my brother, is a hairy man, and I am a smooth-skinned man. Like, how am I going to deceive my pops?" And from then on is when Rebecca works the magic, right? Helped him cook up the meal that Jacob had wanted to be cooked up for him. Helped him to go out and get like a choice sheep, and essentially covered and cleaned all the things, right? So he felt like his brother, but he still sounded like himself. And what I noticed throughout chapter 27, verses 22, 23, I'll read, but 22 will read, "So Jacob went near to Isaac his father, and he felt him and said, The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau." So that goes back to like that choice sheep that they found, to clean it up, the skins of the kids and goats, not sheep, my bad. So kids and goats. So that is what he had covered himself in. And then 23, "And he did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him." Now throughout 27, Isaac kept thinking like, I don't know, right? But every step of the way, Rebecca and Isaac thought through how to reassure him before he gave his blessing. And then verse 26 is with when Jacob felt affirmed, because he kept saying like, "You don't sound like Esau, but you smell like Esau. You don't sound like Esau, but you feel like Esau. Let me make sure." So Jacob in verse 26 of chapter 27 was like, "Esau, let me kiss your neck." So it says, then his father Isaac said, not Esau, my bad. Esau's father, Jacob his son. But then his father Isaac said to him, "Come near now and kiss me, my son." And he came near and kissed him, and he smelled the smell of his clothing and blessed him and said, "Surely the smell of my son is like the smell of a field which the Lord has blessed." So that was his confirmation before giving his blessing to who really was Jacob or Jacob, and not Esau. Now Isaac thought that he was blessing his son Esau, but it was really Jacob. So that's 27. And going over to the last thing that stood out, because y'all know what happens when Esau come back from the field. Esau wanted to kill his brother Jacob. And Genesis 27, 33 through 40 is when like it gets real. But it reads, Genesis chapter 27, 33. "Then Isaac trembled exceedingly and said, Who? Where is the one who hunted game and brought it to me? I ate all of it before you came, and I have blessed him. And indeed, he shall be blessed." When Esau heard the words of his father, he cried with an exceedingly great and bitter cry, and said to his father, "Bless me also, O my father." But he said, "Your brother came with deceit and has taken away your blessing." And Esau said, "Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has supplanted me these 2 times. Now the first time was when Esau was hungry outside of his mind and sold his birthright to his brother because he wanted something to eat. That was the first time. Second time he comes in, he's like, "Hey dad, I've come back based on understanding that you saying you don't know how long you're going to be here. You sent me out in the field to go get all the things. I'm back." Right? So in the beginning of 27, like, I don't know if I said this earlier, but in the very beginning, Isaac was talking to his oldest Esau. And then Rebecca was in earshot. That's how she knew to tell Jacob what to do, while Esau got word, go out in the field, hunt, prepare the favorite meal you know that I love, and I'm gonna give you my blessing because I'm getting old up in years. I know how long I'm gonna be here. So that's what I don't know if I shared that clearly in the beginning, but long story short, Esau is beside himself. He did everything his dad said to do. However, he was deceived, and he's frustrated because this is the second time he's gotten by his brother. But again, Rachel did what she felt was right because of what God told her during childbirth with those twins, that the older Esau would be serving the younger. So while we feel some type of way about how it all went down, I don't think that Rebecca lost much sleep that night. Forgive me if I'm interchanging Rachel's and Rebecca's. Y'all kind of understand based on genealogy, but it's Rebecca. But Isaac married Rebecca, and them two had Jacob and Esau, and of course many others. But this is about Jacob and Esau. But please read the entire chapter 27 to get like all of the information from there. But reading on, Isaac is beside himself. He still wants to be blessed. His dad explains to him, I've already given the blessing. I can't take it back. Right? Isaac loves the oldest more than he loves Jacob. That is explicitly written in the story. So he does bless him. But he can't bless him with the blessing because he's already gave all of the inheritance, everything he owns. He gave the inheritance to Jacob already. So that's what verses 33 through 40 is reading. And as a result of that, when Esau knew what all had occurred, because long story short, Esau's blessing ended up with Isaac saying, you gonna have to serve your brother. Like I've already told him, how I go down. So even though I'm blessing you, you have to serve your brother. But Esau was on a rampage. He wanted to kill Jacob. So long story short, Jacob talks with mom. Mom convinced Jacob, get what you can and get on out of here, right? Because your oldest brother is not happy with you, and I'm afraid he's going to take your life. So that's how they end up going in separate directions from then on because of the deceit, or the perceived deceit, rather. So that's 27, and that's kind of what stood out to me. Moving forward to Genesis 28, verses 10 through 22 is what stood out to me. There was a vow that was made at Bethel. Bethel is a significant place that means house of God. But in 28, Jacob made a vow at Bethel. And then verses 10 through 22, God visited Jacob in a dream and shared with him the promise of covenant that he made to his dad and his dad's dad. So Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, right? Can't be Abraham, Isaac, and Esau because Esau didn't get the blessing. Jacob did. But according to what God already knew was going to be, older going to serve the younger. So we got Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. And in that vow, 10 through 22 significance, the dream occurred. Jacob heard and understood and received that nation is going to come from him. Bless as many stars in the sky, sands on the beaches, right? And any direction he looked at, his family and family's family was going to be blessed, right? That's the vow. And then I underlined some things because there's always interesting arguments about, is God a God of conditions, or is God unconditional? I say God is both and. He loves unconditionally. However, God has expectations. So there are always conditions, right? Same with on this earth, those who are blessed to be over anything or anybody, there's always an if and then for the sake of order. But verse 20 says of chapter 28, if God will be with me and keep me in this way that I am going and give me bread to eat and clothing to put on, so that I come back to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. Now, this is what Jacob says, because Jacob is just out here almost like nomad, right? Because he's had to run away from his father's house because Esau wants to kill him based on what happened. He got from his birthright because he was so hungry, long day. Second time around, he got from his inheritance, from what was promised to him from his dad. So the if then is what stood out to me because I've seen it a lot in the beginning of Genesis where God himself was saying, if you do these things, then I will do these things. But that is kind of like what stood out to me. Specifically, if you read verses 10 through 22, you'll see the deepness of the vow that occurred. Moving on to Genesis chapter 29. I always smile when I see women in the Bible being seen as upstanding characters and not the problem with humanity. Depending on whom we learned under, it's easy to see a lot of women in the Bible as problematic. We love to talk about don't be a Jezebel. We love to talk about the story of Samson and Delilah. Don't be a Delilah. We love to talk about, man, if Eve wouldn't have did what Eve did, but not recognize that Adam was right there the whole time. So it's a lot more examples like that, right? When we're just like, oh goodness, like, oh, women, right? But what we always go back to is headship is man. When man is in right standing and operating in headship, sometimes a lot of things are avoided. We also fail to see that God still uses women mightily, right? And there is an order to things. Women came out of man, right? When you operate as one flesh, not I'm over you, you over me, that is what God honors and allows to prosper. But I'll get off my little tangent there. But I smiled when I saw Genesis chapter 29, verse 9, because it explicitly states that Rachel was a shepherdess. So earlier, y'all saw me intermixing Rebecca, which is Isaac's wife, with Rachel, who would become Jacob or Jacob's wife, right? But Genesis 29 reads, now while he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. So I'm going to fast forward. Jacob had to get out of Dodge because he inherited Esau's blessing. Esau came back 38 hot, not feeling it because he can't get what's already been given him by covenant due to customs and culture, right? And his dad, Isaac, tell him, I'm sorry, like I've already given the blessing to your brother. I thought he was you. I didn't know, but I can bless you, but I can't take away what I've already spoken is so you're going to have to serve your brother. So Esau is coming for the head. Jacob, he runs away. His mom tell him, you going to have to go. Ain't nothing I can do, right? And he's just out here. And then God reminds him of the promise because he's out here in the no man land, right? And he's going through it. Lord, I don't know where the food at. I don't know where the water at. I don't know where I'm at. Can you protect me from these peoples? And God does and reassures him. Long story short, he continues to find his way, be protected, be blessed. And then the person who is servant to him, he sends them out and say, hey, go find me my wife, in so many words, right? And then there's this woman, Rachel, who becomes his wife, that he goes and essentially marries. But there's a story behind Jacob going to want to marry Rachel. And I'll kind of fast forward to that. So his servant didn't go get it. This is me again mixing up Isaac. Isaac had someone sent on his behalf while Abraham kept Isaac in the land with the family. Now this is Isaac's son, Jacob. Jacob out here making his own way. God is keeping him. And he meets his wife. His wife is Rachel, who's a shepherdess. That's verse 9 that jumped out to me. Fast forward to 9 through 14. The whole story is Jacob saw Rachel, which was the daughter of Laban. Laban is Rebecca's brother. Rebecca is Jacob's mama. So they always keep it in the family. Again, Western mindset, you like, what's up with cousins marrying cousins and uncles marrying nieces? Like, what's happening? Don't make no sense. It's not going to make sense to us because that is not our custom or our culture, right? We live in the North of Americas in this day and age and time where there are laws in place that says you don't do that, right? So when you get beside that and just read it for what it is, Rachel explicitly sends Jacob off on his way. He's a little weary and uneasy. God reminds him of the promise. I'm going to keep you. I'm going to bless you good. And your children going to be good. Jacob continues to be obedient to what Rebecca told him. And then he meets the person he falls in love with, which is Rachel. All right. So Jacob is now in Laban's house after meeting, like he sees Rachel first. He loves Rachel, like love at first sight story. But long story short, Laban says, all right, you can marry Rachel. But when it comes time for consummation to happen, they're veiled from a cultural standpoint. So Jacob doesn't know that the woman whom is sent to him to consummate the marriage, make the marriage so, because of the veil, the covering, is not Rachel. It ends up being Rachel's older sister, Leah. Fast forward, for those who have never read chapter 29 in its entirety, Jacob feels some type of way, but he understands where Laban is coming from because it's his uncle. When he says, man, you know, customarily, we don't give the younger sister before we give the older sister, but I'm gonna still keep my word to you, right? But you got to serve me 7 more years. That's the crazy part. There was a promise made the first time around from Laban to Jacob. If you serve me for 7 years, I'll let you marry my daughter Rachel. And then they go through the whole custom, right, the ceremony, and it's not Rachel, it is Leah. So Jacob, feeling some type of way, is like, what have you done? That's not who I asked. And Laban was like, well, you know the custom, I can't give baby girl before I give my oldest. So Leah's your wife now, and I'll give you Rachel, but you got to serve me 7 years. Jacob is still very much in love with Rachel. So what does Jacob do? He serves him. And he stays a lot longer than 7 more years once y'all read and see. But long story short, 9 through 14, Jacob marries 2 sisters. Leah, the oldest, Rachel, the youngest. And all I said was love is a beautiful thing, because verses 17 through 20, and I'll read it, is what allowed him to be like, girl, you worth me to give you 7 more years of my life to your dad in this land. But verse 17 to 29 says, Leah's eyes were delicate, but Rachel was beautiful of form and appearance. Verse 18, now Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, I will serve you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. Verse 19, and Laban said, it is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to another man. Stay with me. Verse 20, so Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed only a few days to him because of the love he had for her. Oh, love is a beautiful thing. So that was my takeaway from that. Now, Genesis chapter 29, verses 21 through 30, this is when it's just like, come on, man. So Laban again, which is his uncle, because Laban is the brother of his mom, Rebecca. He is who he is what I'll say. A really good negotiator, but not necessarily an upstanding person when it comes to honesty and integrity. But we see and know a theme of man. That's just kind of how mankind is up to this point. So verses 31 through 35, you'll see Jacob begins to have sons. And he begins to have sons staying longer than the 7 years in Rachel and Leah's father's house. But 31, I'll kind of, I don't know if I should read, but I guess for the sake of time, when you get to verses 31 through 35, you start to see sisters having issues with one another. He's married 2 sisters. Leah is having children. Now, Jacob loves Rachel, but Rachel's womb is closed. So I think Leah has like 4 sons. I don't think I know. And that doesn't make Rachel feel good. So Leah has Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. No problem, right? And then Rachel feels some type of way, and she talks to her husband because she's becoming envious and frustrated. And in chapter 30 is when she essentially gets upset because she's like, I'm not having no children. And she's starting to envy her sister Leah. She talks to her husband about it. And then Jacob gets angry because, like, what you yelling at me for? I'm not God. I didn't do this to your womb. And that's essentially what he said to her. Like, why are you upset with me? I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. The Lord said, be fruitful and multiply. You should be mad at God, not like, what I got to do with it? So Rachel, out of desperation, what she says is, since I can't have children, I'm going to have you marry my maid servant, Bilhah. And this is when it gets crazy to me, right? Because I don't all the way understand culture and custom, right? I also watched a movie with my husband. I think it's like a series called like The Handmaid's Tale. And from a scriptural standpoint, they justified their actions. If folks have seen the Handmaid's Tale series, shout out to one of my former supervisors, Kelly, who was like, y'all should check it out. And we went down that rabbit hole, y'all. But long story short, Rachel's upset. She sees her sister being blessed through childbearing. She hasn't had any. And she tells Jacob, marry my maidservant and lay with her. And so that I can be a part of you laying with her, I'm going to have my maidservant be positioned on my knees. It's scripture. And you're going to lay with her. And whatever children she have, they're my children too. Again, customs, culture, we don't get it. We'll never understand it. However, verses 30, verses 1 through 6 is when you see what happens. So long story short, Jacob was obedient. He listened to his wife, and he laid with the maidservant who had become his third wife, Bilhah. And sure enough, Bilhah bore Dan. So he's on like son 5. But Jacob's 5th son, Dan, was with Rachel's maid Bilhah, whom he also took his wife. And then sisters kept being sisters. So Leah saw it and was like, shoot, well, I got a maid servant, right? Go ahead, do your thing. You can make her your wife and have more children because it's a competition. But people are people. Everything I'm reading translates to daily people's behavior when we let selfishness get in the middle, covetous get in the middle, right? So poor Jacob. Y'all know it said at the beginning, Jacob is a mild-mannered man. My long story short, Leah does the same thing and then gives Jacob her maidservant as a wife. And then she had Gad. Long story short, there was some back and forth going. Leah continued to have children. And then Leah did what Rachel did. Gave another maidservant, Zilpah, to have children. And then Rachel is praying and hoping for children. So since she's barren, she's continuing to have Bilhah. So he's a busy man, long story short. But all of chapter 30 is that going on. And what I thought to myself in verses 1 through 6, I wonder why Rachel didn't seek God when she was just dealing with the envy and feeling less than because she wasn't able to bear children. That's what I wondered. And then I wrote, Rachel did what Sarah did, except Sarah did not give Hagar as a wife to Abram. Because Sarah got impatient too and told Abraham, look, I know what God said. Maybe he meant to get it this way. So here's Hagar, my Egyptian maid. You go ahead and have children through her and they'll be our children, right? And that sowed some interestingness between Hagar and Sarai, which is why Sarah was about to try to cut Hagar and was like, yeah, she got to go because she's feeling herself as a result of being blessed through childbearing because now she's looking at me a little side-eyed. But that's what happened. Bilhah continued to have a second son. And then I just wrote, these sisters allowed jealousy and covetousness to build their house using their maids to have sons. Leah, she jumped on the bandwagon, taking her maid Zilpah, giving her to Jacob. And then Zilpah gave Jacob son number 7, who was Gad, and Asher, son number 8. And then I wrote, the envy and territorial thinking continues over some mandrakes. So this is a type of fruit, mandrake, or food. But God bless Jacob. His wives are running the show. But what I do know is even though I'm not fully understanding, God is allowing it and still blessing them as they desire. So Genesis chapter 30, 14 through 17 is about the food, the mandrakes. But Jacob's 9th son, so son number 9, was with Leah, and his name was Issachar. Then they had son 10, Zebulun, and one daughter named Dinah. And then Jacob and Rachel had Joseph. Joseph was son number 11, y'all. And then I jump over to Genesis 31. So that's just me and my notes. Appreciate you, cuz I see that. I love you. And look, you already know. I love when we connect because we always breaking bread. But love you, Shonda. But yeah, so chapter 31, y'all, 11 through 21 resonated with me. And this is when Jacob ends up leaving Laban, so his uncle's house. He's been there 14 plus years. Done had about all his kids, y'all. Every kid except from Benjamin. Benjamin is the last child. All 11 children. And God is blessing him. So the flock is prospering and doing well. The people are happy. The legacy, the family is growing, right? But chapter 31, I'll start with 2 and 3 because I like highlighted it, and then I'll jump to 11. But verse 2 of chapter 31, and Jacob saw the countenance of Laban, and indeed it was not favorable toward him as before. Y'all pay attention. Verse 3, then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your family, and I will be with you. So he's been gone for probably 2 decades, about 20 years or so, right? And he's noticing his uncle, which is his 2 wives' dad, the countenance shifting. So again, jealousy, if you read a 31, like you'll see the growth. But down to 11 through 20. So 11 through 21, here's my notes. My initial wondering about why Rachel did not inquire of the Lord when she couldn't have children. Me wondering, I stopped wondering because I read verse 19 and I wrote, she is not a loyal servant of the Most High God. And y'all will see. But 11:21 it reads, the angel of God, so this is Genesis chapter 1 verse 11. The angel of God spoke to me in a dream saying, Jacob. And I said, here I am. Verse 12. And he said, lift your eyes now and see, all the rams of which leap on the flocks are streaked, speckled, and gray spotted. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. Verse 13. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed the pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now arise, get out of this land, and return to the land of your family. Verse 14. Then Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, is there still any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? Verse 15. Are we not considered strangers by him? For he has sold us and also completely consumed our money. Verse 16. For all these riches which God has taken from our father are really ours and our children's. Now then, whatever God has said to you, do it. Verse 17. Then Jacob rose and set his sons and wives on camels. Verse 18. And he carried away all his livestock and all his possessions which he had gained, his acquired livestock which he had gained in Paddan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. Verse 19. Now Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the household idols that were her father's. She tripping, y'all. Verse 20. And Jacob stole away unknown to Laban the Syrian, in that he did not tell him that he intended to flee. Verse 21. So he fled with all that he had. He arose and crossed the river and headed toward the mountains of Gilead. So God told Jacob, go ahead and get up out of there. Laban looking at you sideways. You're being blessed. You're prospering. That's causing to be an issue because he's seeing the difference between what's his. Everything that was Jacob's was spotted, speckled. Something was wrong in people's eyes. There was some blemish, right? So that is how he could tell what was his versus what was Laban's. And then I kind of scoffed when Leah or Rachel said, like, isn't what we have ours anyways? Like, it's in our father's house, so we can do what we do. But that caused Rachel to feel justified to steal the idols. Why she did that, we don't know. But, of course, that causes some issues because Laban realizes his family gone. His grandchildren. And Jacob didn't tell him. So, fast forwarding it to, where were we? 27. Laban is upset. So, he goes after them, y'all. Because he's up like, where everybody at? It's real quiet in the house. Mind you, there were 11 grandsons. They didn't even count the granddaughters, right? Nothing, right? But he goes after and he catches up in verses 27 through 30. So I understood Laban. Y'all didn't say goodbye. And in verses 27 through 30, he flat out say, this is what Laban says, because he's upset that his household idols is taken and his grandbabies. He didn't get to say goodbye. But verse 27 says, why did you flee away secretly and steal away from me and not tell me? For I might have sent you away with joy and songs, with timbrel and harp. I want to celebrate. You could have went, but you ain't give me the time to celebrate you leaving. Verse 28, and you did not allow me to kiss my sons and my daughters. Now you have done foolishly in so doing. So Laban feels some type of way. Verse 29, it is in my power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, be careful that you speak to Jacob neither good nor bad. Verse 30, and now you have surely gone because you greatly long for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods? So this is when it gets hairy, right? Because Jacob doesn't know what Rachel has done. Rachel took it upon herself to take her father's idols, the gods. And that's why I realized why she never sought the most high God, right? The true and living God when she was barren. She just wanted to get upset with her husband, right? So to do that means you don't fear the true and living God. You don't have a relationship to know that it's messy what you did. Long story short, Jacob don't know it's Rachel, so he tells Laban, whoever stole from you in my company, you can burn him. Like, handle that. Kill him. He don't know it's his wife. But his wife is sneaky, so what she does is hides the idols up under her personhood. She's sitting on top of a camel. Her dad's searching through all of the stuff, right? Because he's trying to find his gods. He clearly does not have a relationship with the Most High God either. He's a Syrian. I'm always like, man, y'all are interesting. We all come from the same family, and then we just go and do what we do. But fast forward, Rachel sees her dad getting close to searching through the things on the camel, and she was like, Dad, you can't touch me because, like, it's that time of the month for me. And customarily, to be even in the same room or space makes you unclean for X amount of days. Then you got to go through all of these steps to be made clean again. Y'all will see that when we continue to read through. So he doesn't come near her. She purposefully put the idols up under her butt and stuff so that he don't know. Now, when Jacob finds out that he couldn't find the idols, now he feeling some type of way. He get a little emboldened, and he was like, you sitting here telling me what my people did, and it's not even on us. Like, come on, man, what's going on? But Jacob was a mild man until he went off in 31 through 42, and he essentially kind of tells his uncle off because he really feels some type of way. He's doing the right thing, and then he's like, oh, you ain't found what you needed. I'm over it. But long story short, Laban was like, sorry, I don't mean no issue. I know your God is real. Somebody took it. Okay. But y'all should definitely read 31. It's a good one. And then what I love is that sometimes we can assume mild-mannered people don't have moments, but they're capable, right? You just don't want to step on their toe to where they'll essentially say, come on, this is, now I got to say something. But that's what you'll see verses through 42. But it's a great read, the entire chapter. And it's a good lesson on how to achieve a compromise when there's conflict. So skipping to, not skipping, but as far as like what jumped out all the more, that kind of wraps up for me 31. And then in 32, so chapter 32, 24 through 32 is what resonated with me the most. So I'm going to flip there because if I don't, I'm going to start wanting to read. But y'all got it. Y'all can read through on your own time if you haven't done so in a minute. So chapter 32, verses 24 through 32, Jacob wrestles with a man. There are a lot of different understanding about, was the man God, was the man an angel, who was the man that Jacob was wrestling with. But chapter 32, verses 24 through 32, I'm going to read. But verse 24, then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. Verse 25, now when he saw that he did not prevail against him, so this is the man, capital M-A-N, is not prevailing against Jacob, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. Verse 26. And he said, this is the man, let me go, for the day breaks. But he said, this is Jacob saying to the man, I will not let you go unless you bless me. Verse 27. So the man said to him, Jacob, what is your name? He said, Jacob. Verse 28. And the man said, and he said, your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with man, and have prevailed. Verse 29. Then Jacob asked, saying, tell me your name, I pray. And he said, why is it that you ask about my name? And he blessed him there. Verse 30. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. Verse 31. Just as he crossed over Penuel, the sun rose on him, and he limped on his hip. Verse 32. Therefore to this day the children of Israel do not eat the muscle that shrank, which is on the hip socket, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip and the muscle that shrank. So based on how this read, it makes complete sense to me why people say Jacob, or now Israel, wrestled with God, and he got a limp now, but God blessed him, and there his name was changed. So that was chapter 32, verses 24 through 32. Jacob wrestles with the man. Granted, y'all pay attention. The man never told Jacob his name when he asked. However, Jacob's understanding was, I wrestle with God. This is the place that I've seen God face to face, and my life was spared. So that's why I understand when folks do teach on this story. Yaakov, or Israel, wrestled with God, and that's how he got that lifelong limp going on, because he got the socket touched in his hip joint. So chapter 33, which is the last one that I'm gonna talk on today. Y'all read all of it. It's so good. But that's like what I wrote, like read all of it. And then the thing that kind of stood out to me was love, respect, forgiveness. It's a beautiful thing. What I will read is verses 9 through 11 of chapter 33. But please read all of it, y'all. And I say that because this is when Jacob and Esau meet and peace. Now it's been years, y'all. It's been so many years. And before Jacob wrestled with God, him and Esau had a good and healthy understanding. But the healthy understanding was due to a promise of Jacob having so much, and knowing that Esau was on his way to meet him. He was nervous. He was a little scared. So you'll see that in chapter 32. Jacob knows the last memory and experience with Esau was, my brother's coming for my head. So what he does throughout chapter 32 before he wrestles with God is he sends multiple companies of people and flocks and all the things that you would attribute to wealth, and says, every time group 1, when you see my brother, tell him this is all of yours from your brother Jacob. Group 2, when you along the same path see my brother, tell him this is all of yours from my brother Jacob. And I believe Jacob did that like 3 times or so, right? So Esau's on his way to meet Jacob, and Jacob is trying to smooth things over by saying, look at me, right? I've grown up, and I'm gonna do right by you. All of the things that was given to me to the promise because of how the deceit went down, I'm giving it back, right? And it's like a threefold type thing in 32. But 33, you got to read all of it, because this is when Jacob and Esau finally meet. But verses 9 through 11, I'll read. So fast forward, the companies have stated everything that Jacob told them to say while giving Esau all of the things while he's on his way. And verse 9 says, but Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself. Verse 10. And Jacob said, no, please. If I have now found favor in your sight, then receive my present from my hand, inasmuch as I have seen your face as though I had seen the face of God, and you were pleased with me. Verse 11, please take my blessing that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough. So he urged him and he took it. That stood out to me, which is why I kind of wrapped up with love, respect, forgiveness is a beautiful thing. And when you read all the way through, you will see the embrace, the love, the respect, the ability to move forward, right? Now you can meet and hang out with your nieces and your nephews. You can catch up on all the time lost. You can probably really talk about what caused the divide, you know? And because they're reunited, they're not going to be too far away from each other until we keep reading and see both of their companies are growing so much. That's the only reason they go separate ways. They are being blessed beyond measure to where everybody and everything can't comfortably continue to reside together, so they create more distance between them. But that's all I have for Genesis 27 through 33. Appreciate y'all for listening in and challenge yourselves to read all the way through. Again, as things jump out to you, as questions come, I love looking back at the comments to see that, to continue to study and read. Even offline, for folks who don't want to put stuff in comments, that's completely understandable. If you got my number, link up, text me, call me. But continue to make it a great Saturday. And for folks enjoying football and the WNBA, let's do it. But always make sure you're making time for the Most High and making time for yourselves. Take care, folks. Lily, I'm so proud of you.